All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a budget hearing for the school district of the city of Harper Woods. The time is about 6:49. Today's date is June 17, 2014. We have 5 members present. At the current time, we only have 6 members. Mr. Keene, I think, is on his way. Mrs. Purnell has resigned as of early last week, and we are seeking a replacement. So if anybody's interested in becoming a board member, there's information on the website, or you can call Mr. Beaterwolf's office and they can give you information as to how to apply. We'll be having a meeting on, I think it's July the 8th. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
Where we'll be interviewing candidates and selecting our next board member. In any event, we have an agenda for this budget hearing. Do we have a motion to accept that agenda?
Motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of adopting that agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The agenda for the budget hearing is adopted 5-0. We will now commence with the public hearing. We'll begin with a presentation from our business manager, Mr. James Dennis.
Good morning, public and board. It's a pleasure to present to you guys tonight. As Mr. Selburn said, this is kind of like the pregame to the official budget hearing and the budget amendment and proposal that the board will be voting on later on this meeting, as well as I'll be giving you a brief overview of the tax levy that they'll also be discussing and approving. I've got a short PowerPoint presentation. The stuff that I have in here is in your guys' packet, and I'll reference the page numbers that go along. And those folks that are here, those watching at home, can follow along on the 2 screens. And this is obviously very small. You guys can look, it's on page 16. As we discussed at the workshop meeting a couple weeks ago, this was certainly an unusual year for those of us in the business manager office to try to put together a budget with some representative type numbers. This legislature finally last Thursday finally approved the official budget, which was, I would almost go as far as saying, significantly different than numbers we were preliminarily given. So the numbers that you have in front of you on page 16, again, I apologize how small they are. The others, I don't believe the other screens are going to be quite that small, indicates that after adjusting the 13-14 final projection by the $250,000 plus you guys for approving the 1-to-1, I'm looking at pretty much this year breaking even. We initially started off at $855,000 with a very aggressive head count. We obviously did not meet those head counts for a variety of reasons. It went down to $203,000, and then with some minor adjustments, pretty much got flat. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is again to look at the 2016 budget, 14-15 budget. After all of the reconfigurations and the readjustments with the finalized state budget, I'm projecting that we will still come out with $130,653 addition to our fund balance. What I've provided to you guys, this really is small, and I apologize, you guys. I didn't realize it was quite that small. If you could please turn to page 63. It gives you guys an overview of some of the assumptions that I made. Again, some much more locked in stone than they were a couple weeks ago, even as far as last week. Our local revenue is pretty much 90% of the assumed value of the property in the city. That we'll address a little bit later as they look at the tax levy. The state sources, we were given an additional $50 per FTE. The original number was $83 per student, so we were, from the preliminary budget to now, we were cut $33 a person. We did still pick up an additional $50 per student, so we'll be going from $8,049 per FTE up to $8,099. A couple of the small categories were eliminated. The $7 per student hold harmless money and the $30 per pupil performance money was eliminated from this budget. And the best practices money was reduced from $52 down to $50, so we lost $3,000 in that realm. And it was slightly offset by an increase in the MIPSers money that is given to the district to offset the additional funding that the district is being required to pay toward the teacher and the staff retirement monies. All in all, the change from what we knew as of a couple weeks ago versus what ended up reducing our state revenue by a little over $115,000, which is frankly kind of sad based on the overall state of affairs that they were presented to us originally. We're projecting 673 students. It's an increase of 87 over 13-14. I've got the breakout in your packet. We are projecting 468 school of choice, 213 in the general ed K-12, and 250 at diploma success. And the third source of funding for the district is the federal funding. We again got the Title I and Title II funding. Title I money was similar to last year. Title II funding slightly less. We maintain the at-risk funding currently. We have not heard any additional word from the federal government. And the money that we received acknowledgement of for the additional SIG funding, which will be spent over the summer, with a little over $673,000 is included in the federal money. I did this graph here just to give you an indication, and it is actually can address something that I referenced a couple times that the board will be addressing later on. Roughly, almost 80% of our funding comes from the state. So, 8 from the state, 10% from the federal, and the piece that where the actual residents of the board realistically has control over the funding is the local sources. It represents just a tad over 10%, $1.6 million, and we are going to be having a proposal on the ballot this coming August where the residents of the state are going to be asked to re-up on 2 villages that are previously being taxed on the non-homestead revenue. It is not an additional tax. It is strictly re-upping on what we currently have. And it's very, very important to the district. As you can see, it's the vast majority of at least 10% of our revenue, so it's 1.3%. We'll talk about it a little further as we go on, as we go through the agenda. On the expense side, we actually kept things pretty basic so far. Right now, we're actually looking at only 2 new teaching positions based on increased enrollment. It's a second grade teacher at Beacon and an additional math teacher for the high school. We have 2 senior teachers that have retired that we'll be replacing with starting teachers, which will save us each roughly $40,000 for each of those positions. The Mesa insurance, which is all the local one folks have, we originally thought that was going to come in at 10%. It came in at 6.5%, so that was a nice savings for the district. We're implementing the hard cap for all of the Mesa covered employees. And then each of the local one members, based on the contract that was approved last year, each of them are gaining a half a step and a 1% wage increase. That pretty much holds through for each of the different way the expenses are broken out between K-12, special ed, the counselors, the non-local one staff members are maintaining their wages from last year. They are covered by a non-Mesa insurance. That we projected to come in at 10% also. Unfortunately, that came in at 15.3%, which kind of was significantly higher than what the original projections were. The one good thing about it, though, that insurance coverage goes by calendar year, so that will not kick in until January 1st. So we actually have the opportunity between now and then to look at some additional options. So basically what's being presented to you is maintaining at the 10%, because I'm thinking somewhere along the way we'll be able to either get that rate down or find something comparable at a significant lower rate. $60,000 placeholder for the national health care. We've been working with one of our insurance carriers to make sure that we do have a plan in place. We're tracking all of the non-insured full-time employees right now, so to see how many folks would be eligible for the health insurance once that rolls into place, which again supposedly is January 1st, but that has also been a moving target the last couple of years. But the money's in there, you know, should that come to fruition. If not, that's the money that we can actually pull out when we do a further amendment or saving to the district. Realistically, other than that, as far as the building operations, we're replacing a senior custodian at Beacon with a lower beginning pay a member, which will save us $25,000. And I'm looking for some significant utility savings, both in the fact that, from what we've heard, and again, I know it's well out of the future, that the winter is not projected to be nearly as cold next year as it was this year.
Please not.
And we spent a considerable amount of money at both Beacon and Tyrone, as well as some slight improvements here at the high school to put some energy savings and energy efficient systems into place. So we're hoping to reap some of the benefits of the savings, and I reflected that in the budget before you. And just again, this is just a brief overview. I know most of the time, whenever you hear any conversation about school districts, that teacher salaries make up the bulk of the amount of money that's spending. Well, basic programs, the large blue number on the right, represents the majority of our teachers, with the exception of the special ed teachers, and it's roughly 52% of our budget is allocated toward those fine folks. That is my brief overview of the budget that's being presented before you. Again, like I said, it's a kind of a unique circumstance this year, but that's the initial presentation.
Thank you.
Wait, see if there's any questions, Mr. Dennis, if you would, please. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions at this point? There will be an opportunity for any members of the audience to ask questions of the board, but we will have further discussion during the course of the regular meeting.
Okay, Mr. Jones, I know there's a few of those slides that was in our packet, like pie charts.
The pie charts are the only ones that weren't on because once we started getting into it, I think it sort of told the story a little bit better. I'd be more than happy to forward those to you guys. I can answer sitting down.
I noticed you were projecting 87 additional students over last year.
Yes.
All right, is there one particular place, or is that just spread throughout the system, those 87?
So as previously, there's a few different areas where those enrollment increases are projected. Certainly our what we sometimes call our external partnerships, enrollment and diploma success, we're projecting to increase somewhat. We're also projecting the enrollment in our cyber school to increase, and then as well as previously, we're hoping that we will have that fourth section, that fourth kindergarten classroom at Beacon, and then some modest increases in enrollment at Tyrone, the middle school, and the high school as well.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, hearing none. That brings us to 5.0, which is citizens' comments regarding the budget. If anybody in the audience would like to comment regarding the budget, please step to the podium and identify yourself, and we'll be glad to hear what's on your mind. Okay, hearing none. This meeting, the budget hearing meeting, is adjourned. And that then brings us to our regular meeting. We have a revised agenda, which has been left for you at your place here at the table. I'll call that meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of the City of Harper Woods. Today's date is June 17, 2014. The time is approximately 7:05. Again, we have, at the present, we have 5 members present. Mr. Keene is on his way, and we only have 6 members presently on the board. Mrs. Purnell resigned last week. We do have an opening that we will be looking to fill within the next 3 weeks or so. We have a meeting scheduled for July the 8th to interview applicants who would like to apply for that position, and I expect that we'll be selecting somebody that evening. If you want more information about applying for the position, there's information on the website, the district's website, or you can call Mr. Beaterwolf's office, and they'll be happy to fill you in on that. That brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody could please stand and recite the pledge. So we're on this side today.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have this revised agenda. Do we have a motion to accept the revised agenda?
Motion.
Do we have support?
Support.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the revised agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The agenda, revised agenda is accepted 5-0. First item on that agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. Included in the consent agenda are the minutes from previous meetings. That would be a regular meeting of May 20, 2014, a special meeting of June 2, 2014, and a workshop of June 3, 2014. Our expenditure reports for the month of April 2014, approval for overnight or extended travel. First one is James Demand to attend the 2014 Certified Pool Operators Workshop. And the second item on that portion is to approve Shannon Rogers as well as the high school students to attend band camp later in the summer. We have a couple of new hires, Kelly Petrus, a substitute bus driver, and Ashley Jackson, who would be an instructor, a culinary arts instructor at ATS, which is Diploma Success. And we have a resignation from a teacher, Erica, help me out here, Mr.
Civitone.
Civitone? Thank you.
Civitone, yep.
Lastly is approval of the audio-visual contract, which would be with Mr. Bob Gray. Do any members wish to have any items removed from that consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is approved 5-0. That brings us to correspondence. Usually Mr. Keene handles that. Mr. Beaterwolf, are you aware of any correspondence?
I am aware that we have received correspondence over the last week, and in fact, more correspondence than is typically the case.
Okay, and that's all been distributed to the board members?
It has been, and we are continuing to respond to that correspondence on behalf of the district as well.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to 7.0 on the agenda, and that would be the district activities. The first one would be for Beacon. Ms. Gottlieben, if you could tell us bring us up to date as to what's going on at Beacon.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Hello, audience and everybody out there. Well, our year-end events at Beacon were a success as always. These included grade level picnics, reward movies, field day, and of course our coveted kindergarten celebration. And it went very well. We filled the auditorium this year. I've never seen quite so many guests. And the children did an amazing job. Always brings tears to your eyes, and almost all of them will be moving to first grade. Report cards are sent home this week. Parents who are out there, please be looking for them. If your address has changed, we usually get, a couple dozen back because they're undeliverable. So if you don't receive your report card by, I would say, next Monday, contact Beacon office, and I'm sure we probably, may have your report card that got returned to us. Please take time to celebrate the success on this report card and make a note of areas to focus on this summer. You were provided a summer work kit to help provide materials to support this summer reinforcement. And you will find all the materials you will need to address some of those things on the report card within those packets. So just if it's fractions, look under your summer packet under fractions, and you should find at-home materials that you can use to support your student. Summer check-in dates for the summer packets are July 10th, July 24th, and August 21st. Those will be posted on the Beacon marquee. I'm sure Ms. Van will also, Ms. P will also put those out there. And also look on the district calendar. You're going to receive voicemails from Ms. P and I. So please, don't call the office and say, why did someone call me? If I call you, it's about the summer packet, and please be working in it. These packets at Beacon include a pacing guide. So at the top of each page, it'll say day 1, day 2. So if you're a couple days behind, catch up. I mean, it's paced you right through the summer, right to the very beginning of the following school year. So please don't let your student get too far behind. Take it on vacation. If there's a babysitter coming, use all of that time effectively, because if they complete these packets, they are much better able to start the following school year up to snuff in terms of their skills. So please don't let that lag. Teachers' summers have not begun at Beacon yet. We have been working for 2 days now. They're working hard with the math modules. We're identifying the assessments, creating the pacing guide, or tweaking the pacing guide for next year, as well as taking closer looks at the individual lessons, because within those lessons are the 8th mathematical practices, which are the big rock of the new way to teach math. And so teachers are really identifying in each lesson which one of the mathematical practices are being covered, and kind of being conscious of it, because it's easy to say, well, it's number 7 or it's number 6, but we're really taking a look at how is number 7 in terms of those essential practices being used in this lesson. Tomorrow through Friday, we will continue this math work with our external partner, Intervention Solutions, and taking a closer look at the assessments that go with this, creating some questions ourselves, doing some model drawing practice, which is part of that essential skills, those 8 mathematical practices. Pretty much that is just kind of a summative of the end of our year. It was a great year at Beacon. We're hoping to be even more prepared for us in the fall. We will see you all September 2nd. Any questions?
Yes, I just have one. Could you remind the parents when the students return those summer packets at the end, it's all completed, were there special rewards or?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, on those check-in dates, July 10th, July 24th, and August 25th. On July 10th, they will receive a movie pass. On July 24th, they will receive a pool party pass. On August 25th, or 1st, excuse me, they will receive a skate ticket for a grade skate. If they come to all 3, and they will be recorded, all 3 on August 22nd at Johnson Park next door, Ms. P and I will be holding a summer school celebration. But you must come to all 3. If there's any problem with those check-in dates, they can, if they don't see themselves available for one of those check-in dates, check in the first time and let them know, and we can make arrangements for that. So if you're going to be on vacation, don't just stop the process. We'll make accommodations for those few dates if you can't make it. But, as long as you kind of let us know what's going on and those packets are completed. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Anybody else?
No, I just would like to say I was at the kindergarten graduation, and so many parents commented on the teachers at Beacon School and how wonderful it is that their children are cared for to the extent they are.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure the teachers will appreciate
You
hearing
might
that.
not hear those, and the parents around me, they were even given names, but I would not get into names unless I got everybody's name.
Yeah, each teacher was kind of on a competitive hoot and hollering when their name was, Miss Gaglione would then get her accolade, and then Miss Blumhoff. So each teacher who went up there got a little, it was kind of like Star Search or something, and I'm like, wow. So that was a really great day. They put a lot of work into that program, so it was wonderful to see it appreciated by so many people, so many families. It was wonderful.
Isn't it refreshing as well to know that your students will be taking the MEP again next year?
I can't tell you how excited I am over that, Jill. I'm just still have chills up and down.
Since you have not started working on the Smarter Balance Assessment.
Yeah, since we put no time into that at all, but I am confident when it is all said and done, all the work we've put in will not be for naught. And everyone at Beacon, and I know at Tyrone, feels the same way. I mean, we're working toward the same end. It's just which lane we're going to get there, the long road or the short.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Miss P,
I thought you were going to try to say it, but...
formerly known as Miss Fan.
Good evening. Well, at Tyrone, we had a really successful end to the school year. It was a very nice, calm end. On the last full day, we had our typical parent thank you. Students made coupons for their parents and sent out invitations for parents who had volunteered at any point in time. And so staff brings in food, and we have a little breakfast for them, which goes directly into the awards assembly for the school-wide awards assembly. And then the school is released to their classrooms, and then we kind of redecorate the gym specifically for 6th grade, and we bring 6th grade back, and we have our 6th grade completion ceremony. And again, packed gym, just absolutely packed gym with relatives. The kids dress up. They looked amazing. After and it went well. I mean, the kids were great. The kids were excited. Parents were teary-eyed. Mr. Smith was there. It was a nice event. It really was a nice event. All our 6th grade participated. We then do a special luncheon, and I didn't think the weather was going to cooperate because it's important it doesn't rain, and it didn't rain. It thought it was going to rain, started to rain, had a few adjustments, and then it cleared up. So 6th grade gets their own special lunch. Thank you to Chartwells who provided that lunch for them. And then we send them back to their classroom and bring them back down again a little bit later, and we have what we call our 6th grade get-together, where we play music. If they choose to dance, they may. We don't like to call it dance because some people still flip out over that. So, and we have autograph signing, and it's just a fun, a lot of parents brought in munchies, and it's just a fun way to end the year at Tyrone for the 6th grade. Our report cards went home that day, as well as our summer homework packets. So parents, we actually had them sign a slip. Some parents didn't, but it states, that at Tyrone, it's expected they do this, that this will count towards test grades for the first test grades for the new school year. So it's important. If your child's going to do the work, they might as well get credit for it. At our age, it doesn't take it's not hard for some of our students to say, yeah, well, a movie pass or not doing any of my homework. And they weigh those odds pretty quickly. And so it does count a little more at Tyrone. They are expected to do it, and it is worth test grades for the first test for the 4th graders going into 5th, the 5th going into 6th, and yes, the 6th going into 7th. We did something different this year. Our field day was on the last day of school. We've had high absentee rates on the last day of school, and so we saved field day for the last day of school, and it really was a great way to end it. Kids came. We done a lot of absent, which surprised, but not near as much as we've had in the past few years. Again, thank you to our wellness committee. They went out and sought college athletes to come, and they did, and they come to the events, and it is just really amazing to see these college kids. Our kids are so excited to see these guys and these young ladies. And we actually had Swoop come in. For those of you who don't know who Swoop is the Eastern Eagle mascot, and So he came in and he swooped around, and it's just fun because Eastern is green and white and we are green and white and our mascot is an eagle. But the funny thing is, I didn't realize it. All of a sudden there was this huge commotion, and the kids were all going crazy. And I couldn't figure out, and it's just Mr. Charlie walking by. They all thought it was Mr. Charlie in the eagle costume. So when he came walking by, they kind of put two and two together. I'm like, guys, this is the real mascot from Eastern Michigan. They did not believe me until they saw Mr. Charlie walking by. So thank you to all our college kids, and thank you to the Wellness Committee for arranging all that. It's a real nice added bonus for our field day. And the more help we have out there, the better it goes. Just like Beacon, we've got staff coming back to work on our writing curriculum for the Common Core, two days that they work together in grade level, as well as I have some staff attending the Beacon PD for the math. And so, it's become real apparent that summer is a time to do our curriculum work, and staff knows that. And actually, the first group to do that was 5th grade, and they were so relieved. They were just like, gosh, it feels so good to have this done and be ready and have our pacing charts, because sometimes we're trying to teach, like Jan always says, trying to change the wheel on the bus as it's moving. So it's good to see that staff is understanding curriculum work really has to take place in the summer. Any questions?
Speaking of writing, there's a contest going on for all ages, all the way from the youngest kids, age 6, all the way up to seniors. And it was in the Harper magazine, Why I Love My Grandparents. And if somebody would copy this, I really think all of you need a copy, because the deadline is August 1st.
Okay.
And entries for the contest are open for ages 6 to 18. And it's different amount of words depending upon grade level. And I tore it up because I have grandkids of almost all these ages, and I was going to take it to one of them. But we can copy this. I think you all need it because it's something the kids would find easy to write.
That'd be great.
They either love their grandparent or they hate them.
Or they don't understand. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Norwood, if you'd like to step up and fill us in on the middle school and the high school.
Good evening, everyone. Our summer programs are going to start on July 7th to August 8th. We have academic, mentoring, and athletic programs, so it's going to be the campus is going to be really busy. We hosted a football camp on the secondary campus with over 750 students from across the nation. So to have Big Ten schools here, schools from Oregon, from California, if you came up to our campus and you saw all those kids, they were well behaved, Jim spoke highly of them. It was just a phenomenal thing to see our auditorium packed. It was a 2-day event, and it was just really wonderful. So that was really successful. Our middle school PBIS intervention program at the end of the year, Mr. Filbert and a couple other teachers did a phenomenal job with the kids. We just really did good this year, so that went really well. One of the things that I really enjoy, I've never been at a graduation that was held outside, so I just want to thank everybody for supporting us. The graduation was beautiful. I think it's been about 3 or 4 years since we had graduation outside. Beautiful day, high attendance. It was just a nice event. Our GM Student Corps, they'll begin, actually they started today working for their summer program jobs. And we have a lot of PD for our teachers this summer, so I'm just looking forward to everything we're going to do this summer for our teachers and our students. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is 8.0, which is public participation regarding action items. We do have a number of action items tonight. At this time, the comments would be limited to the action items. We do have another item further on where the public can comment on other things besides our action items. Any comments on the action items? All right, seeing no one, we'll turn now to those action items. The first one is 9.1, which is new special education courses, and in particular 9.11 and 9.12 career skills. And I'll see if I can match this up.
Page 48, sir?
48. Thank you.
47, I guess.
Okay, page 47 in your packet, we do have a recommended motion, and that is that the Board of Education approves the 2 new special education courses, life skills and career skills, and the attached associated costs for these, which is also in your packet, and this is for the Harper Woods Secondary Campus. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Do you have support?
Support.
Mr. Biederwolf, if you could fill us in on this. I know we did talk about it at our workshop just about a week ago.
With pleasure, Mr. Selburn. Both this agenda item and the one that follows would be what I would contextualize as enhancement recommendations that are coming before you for your consideration. In this particular action item, these would be elective courses that would be designed to serve our somewhat more severely handicapped special education students. The first of those, life skills, would focus on further developing the ability of those students to envision and to move toward independent living in adulthood. And the second of those, career skills, would be linked to employability skills and the development of capabilities in those areas. And so these would represent new programmings or new programs to serve a segment of our special education population.
Okay, and the total anticipated cost for this is what, Mr. Biederwolf? It's pretty moderate.
It really is pretty moderate. I believe it's just under $4,000, Mr. Selburn.
I'm showing $3,775.
But that's for both.
Right.
Correct, it
We're taking
is.
them in, okay.
So there's no additional staffing that is required in support of these programs. Really, that would be for some equipment and consumable materials and things of that type that will enable these programs to be of a high quality.
And for what it's worth, we have had some conversation, as you can imagine, with Brian and Chartwells, and they're very excited about partnering with us as far as this endeavor goes.
And I think what we learned last week was that these type of courses are becoming fairly common in other districts.
Absolutely. I think that as a nation, we're doing a better job of realizing the capabilities of handicapped individuals, and the purpose of these programs is to make sure that our graduates are positioned to their full capability to live independently and to become part of the world of work in a meaningful way.
All right, thanks. I think, my own feeling on it is I think we certainly owe it to these students and to these families to do this. And it's such a moderate proposal. I just can't even imagine any reason not to do it. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the district adopting the 2 new special education courses, life skills and career skills, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The 2 new courses are approved, 6-0. Which brings us to 9.2, which is the new boys-girls MHSAA swim program, which Mr. Biederwolf just referenced briefly. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approves the implementation of a boys and girls MHSAA swim program and its associated cost of $20,395.72. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
There's support?
Support.
Okay. Now, Mr. Biederwolf, if you can elaborate a little more on this program.
Well, again, I think a real positive recommendation. We know that many districts across the state are reducing extracurricular activities or finding themselves in a situation whereby they need to impose or increase pay to participate fees. as a board, you already made a decision earlier this spring that we will not have paid to participate activities here in our district again next year. I think that will be the third year in a row where the board has made this decision, and this particular action item then is kind of the opposite of that. It's a recommendation to expand the programs that are available to our students here in our district. Over the last couple of years, in significant part as a result of our partnership with the United Way, we've had many more of our kids, if you will, in the pool, learning how to swim from a safety standpoint first, and in some instances learning how to swim then on a more competitive basis. And we think that we're at the point whereby our participation level and the skill set of our kids is at that place whereby we can begin to compete in Michigan High School Athletic Association sanctioned events. And so this would be a program that would result, should you approve it, in our having both a boys and a girls. Those are two separate programs, swim programs that would become part of the fall and early winter athletic extracurricular offerings that are available to high school students here in the district.
Any questions or comments?
And we have the pool, and I think it's great. It's going to get more use, and every child should know how to swim.
We've had many more of our students participating in swimming and enjoying doing so over the last couple of years, Mrs. Bonino. It's nice to see.
Very good. Thank you.
Students have been surveyed to see what the level of interest is?
Well, better than surveyed, although that has happened. I mean, kids have actually been participating in a club-based activity that was kind of been the building platform and the launching place for this recommendation.
And this cost, is this currently embedded in the budget that we're going to be asked to adopt?
I believe that's the
I
case.
sort of assume you guys are going to go for it, so yes, it is, as was the special ed piece.
Is this going to, will this result in students also having, developing the skills and the training to become lifeguards?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, that is an additional added value component as we view it. We've got some very dedicated, highly experienced and highly certified members of the anticipated coaching staff. We do still need to negotiate with the HWA and post and those kinds of things. But pending the hiring process, there's a great likelihood that some kids will achieve those level of certifications. And there we go again. Now they're positioned where they can go out and get some jobs and, work in college pools or whatever they might be and generate some income.
I've been reading in the media recently that there's a shortage of lifeguards.
I've heard that as well. I don't know personally, but it's been mentioned, yes.
Some pools delayed their openings in some areas because they couldn't find lifeguards. So it sounds like there's jobs available for kids with these skills and certifications.
It requires certification as well as skills.
All right, anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor of adopting the motion to adopt the new swim program, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The swim program is approved, 6-0. And that brings us to 9.3 on the revised agenda, which is, that's where the difference is from the original agenda. This is, I believe that's the difference. This is the approval of the construction bond repayment tax levy. 78, page 78, everybody. Okay, not sure about this motion, this recommended motion. Is this,
I think,
at what level?
yeah, I think ultimately what needs to be added there, Mr. Selvern, is, I believe that the board is more interested in the 10.86, and so I would recommend that the motion be amended to include that recommended levy.
Okay.
And frankly, it should say the total millage levy, because you're also approving the non-homestead piece also.
Okay, so you want it to say, give me that language again, Mr.
I would just
Dennis?
say that the Board of Education approves the fall millage levy.
Fall millage levy.
Yes.
Okay.
Which include, I don't know if you want to get further, which includes the non-homestead and the debt repayment.
Okay.
But we have to specify
We have
the
to
debt
specify the
repayment
level of the debt
at
repayment.
10.86.
Okay, again, I gave you both options, so if you want to specify it in the motion, certainly.
I don't see both options in the packet, Mr. Dennis. Did we not get that accomplished in the way we
They
had
are on
intended?
page-
Yeah, they're
Page 79
79
and 80.
I see, pardon me.
but it's not in the motion.
Brian, seriously, the reason why we left it kind of vague is because you guys obviously have two options to choose, and whichever way you want to go would be the formalized motion once the discussion's been had.
Well,
That total debt levy,
28.86, right?
I'm having trouble with my calculator, Mr. Key. I'm going to trust you on that, as I've got a little bit of a screen problem today.
If we can just somehow in the motion put at a total of 21.86 mils, I think it will distinguish between the two.
well, how's this? That the Board of Education approves the construction bond repayment tax levy for 2014, 2015 at the 10.86 level and the fall millage levy. Is that going to do it?
I think that would be
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. All right. So, again, that's the motion. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approves the construction bond repayment tax levy for 2014-15 at the 10.86 level, 10.86 mills level, and the fall millage levy. Do we have such a motion?
Motion.
You guys are making me nervous. You gotta say yes.
Do we have support?
Support.
Okay. All right. Now, who's going to fill us in on this?
Well, I'll speak to it first, if that's okay.
That's fine.
And it's, so fundamentally, this dates back to the construction bond that dates to, or that rather enabled the construction of this facility. And at that time, a certain millage level was identified. It was a 7.5 mil, I want to, 7.4 mil. And that's what's been in place for that intervening period of time. But the revenue that's then generated to pay back the debt on the construction bond is based upon property values. And here in Harper Woods, like across the state, property values over the last 5 or 6 years have declined and declined fairly significantly. As a result of that, the repayment rate, in terms of the monies that are generated to pay off then that bond debt, have been less than what was originally anticipated. And that happens across the state. And this is a multi-billion-dollar loan fund that exists as part of the government here in our state. And so as a result of what happened here, declining property values resulting in somewhat reduced revenue of repayment, that being repeated dozens of times across the state began to create that large state bank, if you will, as being somewhat underfunded. In response, the legislature passed in March of 2013 a mandatory, and I think that's the most important word, a mandatory piece of legislation whereby these repayment rates had to be revisited. And that really is what it is that is before the Board of Education this evening. There are two options that exist in that determination. One is to do it in a stepwise way that's based upon a 5-year calculation of the property values, or one is to do it in the maximum way that would result in the bond being paid off at its originally anticipated date. And so that's really the question that's before the board tonight. is your choice of that maximum 13.0 or that progressive implementation of 10.86. And the motion that you've taken would suggest that it would be that stepwise 10.86 that you would believe to be in the best interest of the community and in the best interest of the district.
And if I may further expound on what Mr. Biederhoff was saying, and to give you guys some numerical information to tie out to that, in 2009, the taxable value was a little over $239 million. In 2014, it's $128 million. It was a 46.75% decrease in the taxable value, which these percentages are tied against as far as the loan repayment. Thus, the need for us to go up from the perennial 7.4% to the potential 10.86.
Okay. But again, Mr. Dennis, just for clarification, one of these decisions is mandated by the legislature. This isn't something that the Board of Education is initiating, nor is it something that the city is initiating. It is a mandated statewide legislative action.
It is statewide mandated to all school districts that have taken advantage of this loan program.
I think it's important to note, first of all, that the 10.86 option did not come about until, or it has come about since the time we've last met. So as a board, we really haven't talked about this. We talked about the 13 million. The 10.86 option is new, and it will end up costing the community as a whole a little more money in the long term. However, it's also, almost 3 mils less in the short term for this year. I was pretty clear on this. I was going to vote no and let them mandate it, let them do it. The problem is now we have the lower priced option. I'm in a bit of a quandary. If we say no, they're probably going to implement the 13%. So I'm probably going to, support it at the 10.86, but I'm not happy about it. I mean, these bond companies, they take this risk, and it's not that the money isn't going to be repaid. It's that it would be repaid longer, in a longer term. Sure, it would cost the community more in the long run, but they're able to spread it out, and most people are familiar with doing that with their own budgets. Sometimes you just do. Sometimes you pay the minimum payment instead of pay the balance. And I hate being the one to, make this decision, but like you said, it's kind of enforced upon us. You sent the legislation over, I started looking at it, it's difficult to get through.
It is.
I don't know. At this point, I mean, it's, there's a potential savings here, so I think we need to take advantage of it.
Just one thing I need to clarify, because I think both of you referred to it as percent. It's mils.
No, that's
It's
what I mean,
mils.
mils, yes. And it equates to a 3.4 increase. So it's a 3.4 mil increase is what it really amounts to. And, it piles on. I mean, recently our city council just increased our tax levy by 14 mils to cover some operating expenses. It just all adds up.
And just to maybe a little more clarification, when the millage passed 10 years ago, the bond levy passed 10 years ago, it was done with the understanding that the millage rate would be 7.5 mils. That was from what was called the school bond loan program. Otherwise, our payments would have started out astronomical. I think they were projecting a millage somewhere in the high 20s, like 28 mils or something of that nature. And it would gradually go down over the course of the repayment of the bonds over the, I'm not sure if it was 30 or 40 years, and it would continue to go down. What the school bond loan program does is it allows us to flatten that rate, and at the level of 7.4, taking some of that money that would be repaid in the early years and moving it to the end. But it would allow the community and taxpayers to see the same rate year after year after year. And people were told clearly that's what we're going to do, and your millage rate will be 7.4 mils thanks to the school bond loan program. It was approved by the taxpayers with that understanding. People may have seen some reduction, and this is the argument that the city makes. They may see some reduction in their tax bills because of the lowering of the assessments. In theory, this would put people back to a level pre-recession, where they were pre-recession, so that the out-of-pocket would be approximately the same. I'm not sure that they've calculated.
Actually, in this case, I mean, that's the theory, but in this case, our out-of-pocket is still less than it was at the high point, because there was an increase in property values between the time that the bonds were originally sold and the time that the market took a crash. And then on top of that, we've been able to refinance our bonds a few times and shorten our payout. So
That's true.
this number would actually be closer, instead of the 3.46, it would actually be almost 6.5 had those things not occurred.
I personally, I mean, I don't favor that type of an argument for it, because while property values were rising, we didn't see any call for action on that and say, oh, let's lower your taxes because your assessments are going up. You know?
Well, my real point was the refinancing of the bonds. That helps considerably.
It does. And hopefully we'll be able to do that again in the near future, because we've just improved our bond rating significantly to A-, which is really fantastic. I don't think we've seen that in a long time.
The one bond we'll be able to look into refinancing in 2016 and the other one in 2026. So
And
they
if we-
hold you for 10 years.
And if we can maintain that bond rating, that's going to make our bonds attractive
Absolutely.
to companies and people that want to buy into it, and that may allow us to renegotiate, refigure our, not negotiate, but recalculate this millage. And I guess this is going to be done every year.
It is possible
potentially, yes.
that as this comes before the board a year from now, that there may be yet again a stepwise increase below that 13.0. As we understand it currently, that 13.0 is a projected maximum.
But if our property values rise, and we're all hoping they will, that recalculation could actually be lower than the 10.86.
It's also possible.
It's going to be a rolling 5.
It's going to be a rolling 5-year
Until
average.
they change it. And I'm not being facetious. That's how this has been
And
going.
this issue came before the board a year ago. But at that time, we were not given this option. We were told it's 13 mils or nothing.
That is correct.
But we'll give you another year to think about it. So we said, we'll take the extra year to think about it. We decided not to act last year. We'll take the extra year. And in the meantime, now they've added this new wrinkle to it. So in hindsight, it looks like it was good that we waited, not knowing that they were going to do this, but they did. And I think you're right, Mr. Keene. I think if we fail to act, they'll force this on us, but they'll probably force it on us at the high 13 mils. So that makes it a harder decision on our
Unknown.
part.
And fear of the unknown is.
But it's not a bad assumption that they're going to take that road. So I don't know if any of that helped anybody understand this issue a little better, because I don't really understand it completely myself. I'm just doing the best I can.
But we do have to notify the state that we're doing the 5-year calculation. So
That's
to
it.
your point, if we didn't,
Yeah,
then they
that's in
would
the
assume the
resolution.
13 mils, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So really then, that's
Yeah,
correct.
it answers the question.
It answers the question. So, anybody have any questions or comments?
If board members have concluded with their comments, Mr. Selburn, I'd have one more if I might.
Oh, sure.
Okay?
If I could, I'd just like to also remind the board that as part of this particular action item, and, you know, obviously this is a very important meeting for the Board of Education and for the district under that lens of a business meeting, if you will. We've got this tax levy question as well as the adoption of the projected budget for the next fiscal year.
But I would just draw your attention to the fact that embedded in this particular action item is also the non-homestead renewal as well as the Headley override. And I draw your attention to that, and I address this issue for the community as well, because that's an issue that will come before the voting residents of the district in the August election. And so a non-homestead renewal, as Mr. Dennis indicated in his presentation, represents approximately 10%, I believe it was, of the district's revenue. And so when that issue comes before the voting residents, I think it's very important that our residents, as our board already does, have a very good understanding that that non-homestead renewal is A, not a tax increase, B, not a new tax, it is a renewal at the same levy, at the same rate. And it's one of those, sometimes things are just configured somewhat strangely. The non-homestead means that it's a tax that is only imposed upon properties that are not the primary residences, not the homesteads. That's the origin of the language of the population. And so fundamentally, it's a tax that is imposed on business properties. And certainly, the business industry here in Harper Woods is an important part of the community. But again, should the community support the renewal of the non-homestead and the renewal of the Headley override, it's not a tax that they would incur, nor is it a new tax or an increased tax that would be imposed upon the business community. It is a renewal at exactly the same rate, and that as well is embedded in this action item. So there's some significant business components, if you will, in this action item and some that will follow.
I would just add one comment, and that is when you reference the primary residence not being affected, those are owner-occupied primary residence.
Yes, sir.
That does bring up an interesting point. We're approving this tax levy based on a non-homestead renewal that we have not yet received.
So we're clear on that, Mr. Keenan, thank you for asking.
Allowable.
Well, as your documents on page 79 reflect, the Headley override would expire in December of 2014, so you're really barring the voter approval. You would be approving it just to that point.
Right.
The non-homestead itself doesn't actually expire until 2015.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you asked that question.
But it's
Does that help?
okay that we go ahead with the override component of it, even though it is yet to be approved.
Right, because
It is-
It's currently in effect now.
this is for the July
It has
1st
not
assessment,
yet
correct?
expired, okay.
Right.
Yes. Excellent clarification. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? All right, hearing none, I'm going to read this again so everybody's clear. The motion is that the Board of Education approves the construction bond repayment tax levy for 2014-15 at the 10.86 mills level and the fall millage levy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion passes 6-0. That then brings us to 9.4, which is the proposed adoption, the adoption of the proposed budget, and I believe that begins
There's three pieces. It starts on 59.
59? Okay. The
58.
Oh, I'm sorry, the resolution's different.
okay.
But there's three pieces that are,
All right, on page 58 is a motion, a proposed motion, that the Board of Education adopts the attached budget resolution for the 2014-2015 school year. That budget resolution is found on page 59, and I'm going to read it. And that is budget resolution by the Board of Education of the Harper Woods School District, 2014-15, resolved that this resolution be the general appropriations of the Harper Woods School District for the fiscal year 14-15, a resolution to make appropriations, to provide for the expenditure of appropriations, and to provide for the disposition of all income received by the Harper Woods School District. Be it further resolved that the total revenues and unappropriated fund balance estimated to be available for appropriations in the general fund of the Harper Woods School District in accord with the detailed budget projection for fiscal year 14-15 is as follows. Revenue, $15,824,216. Projected fund balance, July 1, 2014, $2,181,521, less the appropriated fund balance, $2,312,174. The total available to appropriate is $15,693,564. Be it further resolved that the $15,693,564 million of the total available in the general fund is hereby appropriated in accord with the detailed budget projection for fiscal year 14-15. Okay, now, is there a third component there?
Well, there's two more components, but I don't know if you want to go on.
Got it on
I
the table,
don't-
so get a motion.
Let's do them in three separate
Okay,
pieces.
fine. All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have support?
Support.
Okay, any discussion? We have had a budget hearing meeting about an hour ago. We did go over this. We've gone over it probably our last three meetings. It's, I think you used the phrase, a moving target.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a
It's
moving
definitely
target.
been moving.
And it's accurate as of today.
We've got the most recent numbers as close as we can possibly get. As I've told you guys before, there's literally over 2,000 general ledger accounts. I've gone through line by line and given it my best shot, and I'm projecting the 130,653 increase. So,
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
If I may?
Sure.
If I could ask the board to just take a look at page 60 just for a couple of moments. Page 60 is kind of that summarizing statement. It's one of the screenshots, if you will, that Mr. Dennis presented as part of the budget hearing.
It was the first one.
It was indeed the first one, and I'm over at the far right, at the last column, the projected 14-15 budget, which is really what this conversation is about. And the board will see there that we are projecting, based fundamentally on our enrollment projections, of a modest increase of our fund balance of approximately $130,000. The column just to the left of that is where we are in terms of our most recent projections as to where it is that we will end this fiscal year on June 30th, with, of course, the independent audit to begin shortly thereafter, as directed by action that you took earlier this fall. But here's my point. My point is that we're projecting a modest increase in our fund balance yet again next year. We are projecting, admittedly, a very small increase in our fund balance this year, but that would be the third, if not the fourth consecutive year where our fund balance, even if only modestly, will have grown. And I would also remind the board, and now I'm at the middle column, or the third column in from the right, that when you adopted the amended budget in October of 2013, we were projecting to increase our fund balance by $203,000, and now that amount is down to just about $1,000. So it doesn't sound good. However, at your direction, we have made a significant additional investment in technology for our students, our schools, our classrooms. That was well in excess, I believe, of $260,000 in general fund expenditures. Represents a tremendous investment yet again in the district. And again, here's my point. In October, that $260,000 expense was not yet envisioned or anticipated. So if you thought you were going to come in $203,000 above water, if you will, and you spent $260,000, it suggests that you should come in $60,000 in the hole. But that hasn't happened. We're still $1,000 we're projecting to the good. So we've managed the district effectively to a savings of $60,000 over the course of the school year. And I would just say, I think that this board should take pride in that. Certainly Mr. Dennis and his leadership of the financial division should take pride in that. it's a good indicator in terms of how it is the district has been managed, not only this year, but in recent years.
I think you could get a few kudos yourself, Mr. Biederwald,
Well, I appreciate that.
as well as our administrators. They've kept the cost in manageable. I think they've all recognized that each building has a budget, and they've stuck to it.
But as well, in a time when, you know, the middle school track program being an example, you know, we've spoken about the one-to-one technology, in a time when we're continuing to invest and expand the programs in the district. Those are good things.
And there's some general principles as to what's recognized as a healthy fund balance on a percentage basis of the budget.
Yes, sir.
I think we're getting close to, I've heard 15%. Oftentimes, I think our auditors would, 15% would be wonderful in this day and age. I think we're getting close, we're approaching that.
Well, Mr. Selvin, you did not tell me you were going to ask that question. But I actually did that calculation earlier today. And my calculation suggested that if we reach our targets for the 14-15 budget, the fund balance will be at 14.65% is my recollection. And we have a board policy that says we should be targeting 15%. So we'd be less than a 0.5% short of that identified target.
There's an old saying, close enough for horseshoes.
I'd like that thinking in this instance, yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none? All in favor
It's
of,
a resolution.
okay, resolution, Mr. Keen?
Ms. Menino,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Mahone,
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Quaker,
Yes.
Mr. Selber,
Yes,
resolution carries 6-0.
thank you. Okay, next
It's going to be page 67, Brian.
is,
The second piece is on 67. It's the debt retirement
oh,
piece.
okay, all right. We have another piece as part of the budget, and that's on page 67. And this is, be it further resolved that the total revenues and unappropriated fund balance estimated to be available for appropriations in the debt retirement fund of the Harperwood School District in accord with the detailed budget projection for fiscal year 14-15 is as follows. Revenue, $2,330,400. Projected fund balance, July 1, 2014, is zero, less the appropriated fund balance of $124,854,000. The total available to appropriate is $2,205,546. Be it further resolved that $2,205,546 of the total available to appropriate in the debt retirement fund is hereby appropriated in accord with the detailed budget projection for fiscal year 14-15. 2014 taxable value, $127,740,981. And the 2014 mills to be levied for the debt would be 10.8600. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Do we have support?
Support.
These are written to be all one resolution.
So we passed them?
Okay, well.
So should we just kind of incorporate them all into one and then make sure we're on the same page with them? But I mean, that's how they're written.
Yes, that's,
Be further
However you want to do
resolved.
it, yeah, that's fine. And then
So the next one's on
the
the
last
last
page
one
is
is
on
the food
74.
service.
no, next one on 70, that was the
It's on
alternative.
74.
It's on 74,
Oh,
it's the food
74, okay.
service.
All right, page 74. Okay.
So 70.
Be it further resolved that the total revenues and unappropriated fund balance estimated to be available for the appropriations in the special revenue food service fund of the Harperwood School District in accord with the detailed budget projection for fiscal year 14-15 as follows. Revenue, local, $87,306. State, $39,222. Federal, $1,090,168. Total food service revenue, $1,216,696. Projected fund balance, July 1, 2014 of $215,000, less appropriated fund balance, $295,009. Total available to appropriate, $1,136,687. Be it further resolved that the,
That's right.
is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, be it further resolved that the $1,078,955 of the total available to appropriate in the Special Revenue Food Service Fund is hereby appropriated in amounts and for the purposes set forth below for fiscal year 2014-15. Personnel cost $458,004. Food cost $466,792. Management fee $27,639. Administration fee $34,560. Purchased services and other expenses $91,960. Outgoing transfer to the general fund $57,732,000. Total food service expenditures $1,136,687. And as pointed out, this should have been part of the original motion.
So what if I just revise my original motion to incorporate all three parts and we just redo it?
Well, we'll have to redo it. We've already read the first part.
Right.
So we have a motion to adopt the attached budget resolution, all three parts for the 14-15 school year. Do we have a motion?
Yes.
Do we have support?
Support.
Okay. Any further discussion? I have one question.
Why the difference?
The difference on the food service, the other, they matched, those
Right,
numbers matched. and on
Because
this-
what they allow us to do on this, the difference, if you look at it, is the last number of your grouping, the 57,732, we're allowed to charge 5.3% on indirect costs.
Okay.
To transfer that money out of the food service fund into the general fund to pay for like my time and, Phyllis's time and whoever else is involved in any processing. So that's the difference.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
but I didn't have time to make the calculation.
And I also notice here, Mr. Dennis, that you're projecting revenue of, I'll call it 1.2 million, and expenses of 1.1 million, which means that our food service account is self-sustaining and in fact is bringing
Absolutely.
some added value fiscally to the district.
Absolutely. We're projecting just based on the raw figures of, which is on page 76, of $138,000 profit from it. And then again, accounting for the fixed asset, or the variable expenses that we're allowed to transfer to the general fund. And out of this 295 projection, we will be paying for the Tyrone,
That's-
which we are meeting tomorrow. They should be starting next week.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So out of these so-called profits, nobody's walking away with profits.
No, we are reinvesting it,
We're reinvesting that
absolutely.
money back into the district. We're doing a renovation at Tyrone. Are we doing something at Beacon as well?
They've actually extended the time when they were allowing school districts to apply for their grant. So it's going to take longer to hear back, but we're anticipating that we're going to be getting some modernized equipment for Tyrone also, so.
Beacon.
I'm sorry, for Beacon, yes.
Is that going to be total grant money, or are we going to have to put something?
No, this is total grant money.
Oh.
We were able to specify what piece of equipment we wanted. So Brian, of course, from Chartwell's was involved in that.
Okay, you jumped on me a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That was my only question. Anybody else have any questions? Any comments? Okay, resolution again, Mr. King.
Ms. Menino,
Yes.
Ms. Mahone,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Quaker?
Yes.
Mr. Selber?
Yes,
Resolution carries 6-0.
all right.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, now brings us to 9.5, which is city year. And
77.
77? No way. Is it? Oh, okay. There's no material, son. It's just a contract. All right. Is that correct? 90?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to ask questions? I can
I
clarify.
will. Okay, that number's changed. Another moving target.
When they go down, it's not a big.
No, it's the SIG funding piece.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Right. Oh, because of the
But the
overlapping
contract is
of
still
the
for 100,
terms.
isn't it?
You know what, you're correct as you say that, Mr. Selburn.
Our contribution from the general fund would be 90, but the contract, which is what we're approving, is for 100.
You are correct as you
Okay.
make that statement. My apologies.
All right, so change that in your packet.
But the budget component is 90
Yes.
for our 14th.
Okay. All right, the recommended motion is that the Board of Education authorizes a contract with City Year, otherwise known as City Year Corp., for the 14-15 school year in the amount of $100,000. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Support.
Okay. Maybe you should start out and explain what the difference is with the 100,000 and the 90,000.
Yes, so, and I appreciate your asking, and I do apologize. This would be a $100,000 contract for our City Year Corps. We would expect approximately 2 additional members beyond the staffing that we have had in the district over the last couple of years. As the board is aware, this is a near-peer, peer mentoring program that we've had on our secondary campus both this year and in the previous year as well. Third year, excuse me, for 3 consecutive years. And so in this particular instance, for those 3 previous years, it has been funded by our school improvement grant. That grant, while we have gotten an additional $600,000, does expire as of September 30th. We have gotten authorization to pay the first month of the contract under those auspices, and so 10,000 of the 100 would be covered by the school improvement grant. $90,000 would then come out of the general fund should you approve this recommendation. And just for your further clarification, action items 9.1 and 9.2 were already embedded in the 14-15 budget that you just adopted. With this particular recommendation, this is not an expenditure that is currently embedded in the budget that you just adopted. So that budget projects end of the fiscal year 14-15 anticipated increase in the fund balance of approximately $138,000. Should you support this motion, that $90,000 then would be a subtraction, if you will, and would move the projected increase in fund balance to approximately $48,000. So the clarification is those previous enhancements were embedded in the budget you adopted. This particular item is not embedded in the budget that you just adopted. Should you approve this motion, it would then become part of the action you would take as we move to amend the budget, likely in October when we have more solid enrollment numbers.
Okay. The previous 3 years that we've had them here, it's been paid for with it was part of the school improvement application, as well as then funded by the grant that we received.
That is correct.
So when we asked for the grant, we told them we were going to be engaging with City Year. That's part of our plan.
Yes.
Okay. So this is an effort of sustainability of that plan.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now it's going to, the only portion of it that would be paid out of the grant money is that first 10,000.
Yes.
Which is still money that could be used for something else.
Correct. We have been authorized for the funding amount. Were the board not to support this recommendation, we would still have that $10,000 that we would then identify an alternative meaningful use for.
We call this a recommended motion because that's how we phrase this and that's how we characterize this. But we've had a lot of discussion on this over the past few weeks.
Indeed.
Unless things have changed, I don't believe that you, as superintendent, are recommending this.
Well, for fiscal reasons.
Okay.
It's one of the things that, we've spoken to it, or at least I've spoken to it a little bit tonight. We've managed the district, we believe, well. And I think one of the things you want to be concerned about is building structural deficits. Now, in fairness, this would be an annual decision for the board, something directly under your control, so it isn't truly a structural deficit. My concern is you know, hopefully I've evidenced it, I'm very committed to bringing resources to our students and to our schools. However, you know, we've gone through very difficult financial times previously, and if that occurs, you can't bring resources to students in schools. So my hesitation, and thus my decision not to truly myself as one person recommend this, is really just for fiscal reasons, and exclusively for fiscal reasons. I think City Year brings added value.
Okay. And just in fairness to the discussion, Mrs. Norwood, our principal, is a strong supporter of that we go forward with this.
Absolutely, and in further fairness, when I was a principal, I would certainly have been advocating for this and wanting to maintain this resource, you know, available for my kids and for my school as well. So, you know, as you asked that question, indeed she is, and I fully understand and respect and accept that, just as I will your decision, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I've been a leading voice on this. I see it as a resource that is, when you look at the man hours involved and, you know, it's hard to really determine the actual benefit. I mean, I don't know that we can, but I just think it's too much bang for the buck to pass up. I respect your position on the fiscal part of it and promise not to hold it against you. But I still strongly support it.
So you're looking at 12 staff members for $100,000?
That's what I would be anticipating, yes.
That are here 4 days per week, but long days.
Yes, sir.
Average time they're getting here, what time in the morning?
Building staff would know better than myself, but easily 10-hour days, if not 12.
It's just hard to say no to that for that kind of money. And it's a different relationship that they have with the kids. It's not really a staff, but it's not just, you know, their buddy either. I mean, these are recent college graduates. They're, you know, I just think it's a good choice.
Good role models, Mr. Keene. I cannot argue that point.
Just so we're clear though, when you refer to them as staff, we're not talking about staff in the same way we refer to our teachers.
Absolutely.
These are not certified teachers.
Right.
May not even have training in teaching,
Many don't.
but they're dedicated and they're motivated. Their heart's in the right place, that's for sure.
How'd you get 2 more?
Little encouragement, Mrs. Menino.
Okay. So we get more for our buck.
That's the belief.
Is that in the contract?
It will be in the contract. We have not executed the contract. We're waiting on your action.
But it's in the proposed contract?
Yes.
That number?
Yes.
Well, that's a new development.
No, we talked about that before.
Yeah, he's always
Yeah.
said that, you know, he's gonna get us 2 extra people. They wouldn't take money off to go with 2 less people.
Correct.
Tried that avenue.
Okay.
Well,
Any other discussion?
as long as we still have money left, and what are we here for? For the kids. And let's face it, they're mentors for the kids and they're fantastic. Got more energy than any of us.
More than me. They're high energy folks.
Yes.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, I still like what City Year would do for the school and when they come out and how they're helping the students. But something that you did say was that before they were funded by our SIG fund, and now they won't be. That $90,000 is going to come out of the general fund. Only $10,000 is going to be from the SIG fund. And that sometimes we have large unexpected expenditures, just like when we went to one-to-one technology, and that cost us over, what was it, 100,000?
Over 250.
Over
Ms. Williams, yes.
250,000. And that wasn't planned for it, but as things came up throughout the year, it was something that we did approve. We saw the benefit of that one-to-one technology. So sometimes you have those large items that just come up throughout the year. So because of that, and I see that city year isn't part of our budget that we've already voted for. It would be an extra cost that's coming out of the general fund. I mean, I love city year, but because that extra financial cost that's going to be, I would vote no. Because I see that in the future, there just might be another great expenditure that we, didn't foresee come up next year, so.
I know we've brought it up before, and I think we've struggled with trying to put a handle on, trying to measure the value of these city year volunteers. And we've just never been able to come up with a way to measure it.
Because they don't ever do work in isolation. They work in partnership with our teaching staff. They work as a component of all of the various initiatives that we have in place. And so we can always include them in outcomes and recognize they've made a contribution, but to say exclusively, this is what City Year has done, the program just isn't structured that way. So it becomes a little more qualitative than quantitative.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, we'll call the question. That the Board of Education authorizes a contract with City Year for City Year Corp., also known as City Year Corp., for the 14-15 school year in the amount of $100,000. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay.
Nay.
The motion is approved, 5-1. That takes us to 9.6, which is the school aid borrowing. And I'm not sure what page this is on.
86.
86. Okay, we have a proposed motion, a recommended motion, that the Board of Education adopts the resolution authorizing issuance of notes in anticipation of state school aid 2014 borrowing through the Michigan Finance Authority. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
We have support?
Support.
Okay. Are you going to explain this, Mr. Beadle, or Mr.?
No, sir. I will
Dennis.
defer to Mr. Dennis on this
Okay.
one.
Just for the record, I'm done after this. And the resolution itself literally is 5 pages long, so I think you're sufficient with what you have there.
Okay, I'm not going to read all
No,
that.
no, there's no
I don't
need
have
to.
enough breath.
As you guys may or may not be aware, we do not receive our state funding payment in the month of September. So what the school aid note loan program does is it pretty much, you're borrowing money for the payment that you would have traditionally received in the month of September, and then you pay it back over the course of a designated number of months. There's a lengthy worksheet, which if you guys want to look on page 105, this literally takes hours and hours and hours to fill out, so I won't really necessarily go through all of it. It's just monthly projections and cash flow that ties into the budget you guys just approved and goes a few steps further. So based on the projected year ending this year and the projected year fund balance at the end of next year, I'm recommending that we borrow $800,000, which is the exact amount that we borrowed this year. It was $1.2 million the year before. So I think, and realistically, had we not have done the one-to-one, it would have been slightly less, but we don't need to rehab that discussion because it was such a tremendous opportunity. But so what I'm recommending is that we borrow the $800,000 and we pay it over the the January through July payments of next year. So they take your regular payment and just divide the $800,000 with literally 1 to 1.5% interest. So it's very minimal interest, and it basically just keeps your cash flow going in a month where you would get nothing.
I looked at the numbers and I was having a hard time making sense of it. Do we really need it? I'm not asking if you're recommending that we get it, because I get that. But do we ever dip below that 0 point?
Oh, no, we never get close to the 0
Okay,
point.
so
but
without
again-
it, we could still squeak by, but it would leave us critically low. at
Absolutely, yes,
particular
yes.
place.
I
But
would-
we
I
still,
would-
a couple of years ago, we couldn't have made it.
Right.
we needed it. At this point, we no longer need it, but it's prudent to have that cushion
Right,
in the event
the
of.
fact that they're literally charging us 1%, and what
Right.
they actually do is they reverse the 1% into the 800,000, so we're not really paying 800,000 plus 1%, we're just getting the 1% less, the 800,000 less the 1%. So you, on a monthly basis, we would never even realize the difference in what we're actually paying in the interest, and I think they do that on purpose. But no, I would definitely, there's no way I would not recommend some funding, and the 800,000 is something I'm comfortable with.
No, I'm just really curious.
Right,
as to- We're above that point that we don't
Right.
absolutely need
Now,
it.
literally, as we speak today, now, we are getting our next payment this Friday. I've got roughly about $950,000 in cash, and that's the lowest we've been in the year. So we're still in pretty solid shape. I don't think we're nowhere near a point where we can't borrow anything.
Can you quantify the cost, total expense, at 1% interest, what it comes to?
It would literally, realistically, it's 1% of,
Approximately $8,000.
$8,000, yes.
Yes, okay, yeah.
And again, that's spread over 7 months, so it's peanuts realistically.
And just for my own clarification, Mr. Dennis, would I be correct in characterizing this as, quote, a short-term loan?
Oh, absolutely.
We're
We're going to get the loan in the 14-15 fiscal year. We're going to pay it back in the 14-15 fiscal year. It's not a long-term loan. It's really about some modest funding costs to enable the cash flow of the district, given we only receive revenue 11 of the 12 months.
Absolutely, and they give you 3 options to pay it back. You can pay it back all at once, which, considering the 1%, doesn't make sense. You can pay it back over 5 months, which we're doing this year, and we could pay it back over 7 months, which I'm recommending for next year, because the cash flow implications for going 5 to 7, again, is minimal, and it just reduces it actually increases the amount of monthly allocation we're getting January through July. So it really, again, not to be repetitive, it is just covering the lack of them giving us a payment in the month of September. The state's fiscal year ends September 30th, and they've chosen to not do the funding. I think that started about 5 years ago, I want to say.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor of?
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution, Mr. King.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Mahone?
Yes.
Ms. Menino?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Quaker?
Yes.
Mr. Silver?
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you, guys. I am officially done for the evening.
You can't leave.
I'm not leaving, but I'm done.
A lot of business tonight, Mr. Dennis. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay. And that takes us to 9.7 ATS contract, page 107 in your packet. We have a recommended motion that the Board of Education approves the vendor agreement for alternative educational programs between ATS Educational Consulting Services and the City of Harper Woods School District for the school years 2014-15, 2015-16, and 2016-17. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, all right. Mr. Biederwolf, you want to summarize this?
Yeah, well, so just briefly, the board is very well aware of our relationship with ATS Educational Consulting Services. That's the entity that runs Diploma Success Community High School, our off-campus alternative school, as well as our online cyber school. And by the way, we had, I believe it was 49 graduates from Diploma Success Alternative School. Their commencement was yesterday afternoon, and our first 3 graduates from our online school as well. Mrs. Menino was able to attend to represent the Board of Education. So we know that they're bringing services to kids, they're helping kids to achieve the desired outcome, which is a high school diploma, and we know that financially it's a relationship that is working appropriately and has contributed to the financial stability that we've seen several of examples of tonight. This particular recommendation is a request, in essence, to extend the contract for the 15-16 and 16-17 school years. We already have an existing contract for the yet-to-come 14-15, so this would be kind of a reaffirmation of the contract in 14-15 and an extension to include 15-16 and 16-17.
Other than the years, it's an identical contract.
Yes, sir.
Same terms, nothing changes.
Correct.
And once again, at the graduation ceremony, Mr. Weaver agreed to give every one of the students a scholarship to go on to any kind of further learning. So I would say he's taking that out of their profit, and that is encouraging kids not to stop learning.
And ATS is the same entity, the same corporation with which we have another agreement for the cyber school.
Also correct.
And also the, I keep calling it the credit recovery, but dropout. The
Dropout recovery.
The dropout recovery.
That is also correct, Mr. Selber.
Those two programs are not part of this contract, those are separate contracts.
Yes.
So we have a lot of working relationships with ATS.
And so, yes, and we've seen increases in enrollment in what's before you today in terms of the alternative education services. Not always as much of an increase as we would like to have seen, but increases nevertheless. A pretty successful, I think 40-some students enrolled in the cyber school this year. And, you know, the dropout recovery program is kind of a new initiative that's still yet coming off the ground. But you know what, if you roll the clock back a year from here, the cyber school was just kind of getting started at that point, and 40-some students enrolled in our first 3 graduates this year. They have been a good partner to this point.
Okay. And I noticed that we had a new hire on our consent agenda, which was a culinary arts teacher for the Diploma Success. So they're doing good things over there for kids, I think.
You know, again, it's part of what it is that was why we identified them as a partner. It is computer-based instruction in the core content areas, but then there's that job skill building component, that employability focus through some of their career and technical education programs, with culinary arts being examples of that, computer repair, building and trades, medical billing. You know, they're helping kids who are at risk of not graduating both get a high school diploma and have some skill sets that they can put in front of potential employers.
Anybody else? Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the agreement with ATS for the 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17 school years? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 6-0. That takes us to 9.8, which is a renewal of the MASB membership. That's on page 113. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approves the Michigan Association of School Boards, otherwise known as MASB, membership for the 2014-2015 school year in the amount of $3,466 plus the Legal Trust Fund annual renewal contribution amount of $184, and to include one board workshop in the amount of $675 for the total amount of $4,325. Do we have a motion?
Motion?
Support?
Support.
Okay. This is an annual type of approval that we're asked of. It's asked of us to continue our membership and relationship with the MASB. I think the amount has gone up, and I think that's because we've now exceeded the 1,500 number of students. I think 1,500 is a threshold level, and since we have the ATS students, that puts us into the next level, so it has gone up. But what we've received by going up far exceeds the extra cost.
Oh, no question.
Without a doubt. And this board workshop is something new. That's a new wrinkle. That's a discounted amount.
It is.
If we pay for it in advance, we get a discount, and we're anticipating the need for that workshop because when we had, what was that group?
Advanced Ed District Accreditation.
And they were strongly recommending to us and expecting us to take another look and revise our mission and vision statements. And we're looking to have MASB help us and lead us through that endeavor.
Well said.
Okay. So, and there's benefits. I think we've all seen benefits from MASB. They've got a lobbying campaign that they keep working in Lansing, trying to get money from districts.
We've used their legal consultations in some instances.
We have, and I know a number of, and they sponsor and put on all those continuing education for board members, which a number of members have attended, which brings value back to the district when members go and learn how to be a better board member. It certainly brings value to us. So there's a lot of reasons that we should continue to and maintain our participation with the MASB. Anybody else have anything? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 6-0. That brings us to 120, page 123, which is 9.9 on our agenda, which is the renewal of our Michigan High School Athletic Association membership.
Page 122.
122?
Yeah.
Okay. Misspoke, I guess. It's 122. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education adopts the membership renewal resolution for the Michigan High School Athletic Association, otherwise known as MHSAA, for the year August 1, 2014 through July 31, 2015. And the resolution is found on pages 123. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's very lengthy and wordy. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
We have support.
Support.
Okay. Again, this is an annual thing that's asked of us to approve the membership with the MHSAA. I don't know that I can speak. I know it's of value to us, but maybe somebody else can elaborate slightly on that.
Yep, so helps with scheduling of events. The MHSAA then holds all of the state tournaments that result in, district, regional, and state championships being crowned and so on and so forth. Our swim team being an example, they will now be eligible to participate in those end-of-season MHSAA tournaments. They also provide, much like the NCAA, a regulatory body that speaks to eligibility based upon residency and enrollment time periods and things of that type. They do a pretty solid job.
And they also oversee some of the safety programs.
Safety programs, training of referees and officials and those kinds of things, yes.
I think they have certain requirements that we have certain emergency equipment on hand.
Yes, sir.
Events and so forth, things like that.
Also true.
Okay. So they do a lot of good things for kids.
I think so.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor of the oh yeah, it's a resolution.
Ms. Benito?
Yes.
Ms. Mahone?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Quaker?
Yes.
Mr. Selber?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. And the last action item is the second reading of bylaws and policies and adoption. The list is there on a bunch of different places. The recommended motion, I'll read them because there has been a change. The Board of Education approves the second reading and adoption of bylaws and policies listed. It would include bylaw 0140. It would include policies 1400, 1630.01, 1662, 2431.01, 3430.01, 4162, 4430.01, 5112, 5517.01, 6107, 6420, 6470, 8120, 8142, 8390, 8405, 8510, and 9160. We have a motion.
Motion.
Support.
Okay? Now, this is different, Mr. Beetwolf. This is different from the first reading. Is that correct?
Yes, there was one policy that was removed.
And that was because we learned in the interim that we would need to make some changes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we've just simply removed it, so we will not, without a second reading, it won't be adopted until we can go back, take a look, make the necessary revisions, and then bring it back before the board.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the second reading and adoption of the bylaws and policies that I listed, that I named? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. These policies, second reading, are now approved for the district, 6-0. Okay. That brings us to board items on our agenda, which is 10.0. Do we have any reports from any subcommittees? As far as policy is concerned, I think we do have a need to meet. We've got another round of proposed policies that have been sent to us by Neola.
We are in receipt of them, yes.
That would be the spring version.
Yes.
We need to go over those and meet with the Neola representative, and as well as, I think we have a couple left over from the fall that needed some further clarification.
Those were tied to some food service and PA, Mr. Selmer, and I did revisit that. Those are embedded here in this adoption.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, we got the one that we know that we have to go back and look at. Okay, so policy committee, we're going to have to land on a date that we can meet. Any other committee have anything? Okay, moving on. 11.0, report of the superintendent. Take it away, Mr. Beederwood.
Thank you. I want to speak to two themes this evening, and as is most often the case, I want to begin by leading from the positive. I want to talk about an event that was held here on the secondary campus last Thursday afternoon and last Friday afternoon as well. Principal Norwood mentioned it briefly in her remarks. It was the Sound Body and Mind football camp. And we had 600 student athletes from across the metro area here on our campus, including many of our own Harper Woods High School student athletes. And so this particular nonprofit endeavor is intended to provide those student athletes an opportunity to engage in some drills. They're identified by numbers, if you will, on their shirts or their jerseys. And there are a lot of college recruiters here who are kind of looking at those student athletes primarily through that athletic lens. But the second component is then that all of these students also participate in some character building activities and programmings that focus on athletics and good decision making and so forth. And so our group of Harperwood athletes and those other student athletes that were in attendance had an opportunity to personally hear and interact with University of Michigan coach Brady Hoke, Michigan State University coach Mike D'Antoni, Louisiana State University coach Les Miles,
Notre Dame University head coach Chip Kelly, who has deep roots here in the state of Michigan. Should I mention he's the former coach of Central Michigan? I won't mention that. And, you know, we have to let some of those other folks in, so yes, we have to, Mr. Selburn. We also had Urban Meyer, head coach at Ohio State University. All of them here personally interacting with kids, making remarks, and providing leadership to this great group, and I emphasize great group of student athletes. And I think it is important that we all remember, boy, there's a lot of great kids out there that are doing a lot of great things. But in the spirit of Paul Harvey, we also have to talk about the rest of the story, because we did not have a good day Thursday morning here on the secondary campus. Thursday was the last day of school here in Harper Woods Schools, and on the secondary campus we had final exams that let out at about 10:30 in the morning. And as school was let out, despite some efforts to prevent concerns, and I'll speak to those a little bit further in a couple of moments, we had some highly concerning incidents occur. We had an altercation between two female students break out here in the parking lot, and that served for reasons that, again, I'll speak to a little bit further as kind of a sparking point for two other altercations that occurred here on campus, and a series of 3 or 4 additional altercations that occurred as students left campus and walked primarily along Beaconsfield towards their homes and through their communities. Violent? Well, to a certain extent. No weapons. Fortunately, no injuries. But certainly not behavior that would in any way, shape, or form be appropriate or acceptable. We have some challenges right now. We have a pervasive cultural concern, one whereby conflict is actually desired among a certain segment of a student population for the sensationalism that it provides. And that sensationalism is for reasons that we adults, at least me as one, don't fully understand, particularly something that young people are interested in. Highly concerning? No question. Poor representation of the district? Absolutely. Reflect the community in a negative light? Unfortunately, yes. Negatively characterize those students because of their own decisions and reflect poorly on not only themselves but their families as well, I would say? Yes. So what does it tell us and what do we learn? Well, no question, it tells us that we still have a lot of work to do. However, from my perspective, I think we must also remember that we serve 1,500 students here in Harper Woods Schools every day. In fact, it's closer to 1,600. And we had 10 to 12 students who made some bad decisions. But I don't think we should overlook the approximately 1,490 students who were not directly involved in these activities. Were some of those 1,490 students nevertheless caught up in this moment, intrigued by it, seeking to run from altercation to altercation in the way that kids do? And did that create and further enhance the justifiable and accurate negative perception? No question it did. But fundamentally, this incident was still about 10 to 12 students making not poor decisions, but bad decisions. So how do 10 students come to make such decisions? Well, some of it is individual choice. But there's a new phenomenon, and it's not really that new, but it continues to grow, and just speaking frankly, it continues to make the job of school personnel more challenging, and I'm talking about social media. Now, you used to have to make a lot of phone calls, if you will, to get a whole bunch of people thinking kind of sort of in the same way or to be concerned about the same things. Today, you make a post, and it doesn't reach 10 people, it reaches potentially hundreds of people. And here's part of what it is that we believe occurred. We had a citizen, a parent, I might speculate. I do not know who this person was. We had a citizen or a parent contact the Harper Woods Police Department, thankfully so, on Wednesday night. And that was about 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday night that the citizen contacted the Harper Woods Police and indicated, hey, I've seen a post on, I think it was Facebook, that I'm concerned about.
And the post suggested that students from another school, in this case, an East Side Detroit public school, we're going to come here to Harper Woods School to rumble or fight or, whatever the terminology was. And look, we've got to have honest conversations. Did that post reference that a gun might be present? Yes, it did. And so on Wednesday night, the Harper Woods Police worked through our liaison officer, Officer Robert Hill, and contacted Principal Norwood, contacted Assistant Principal Rosser, who then contacted me. And so we then executed our school safety protocol. We had additional police presence on campus as students arrived to campus that day. We utilized our metal detector processes, and we took steps to send messages to our students, both in terms of what our expectations were and to make sure to take efforts to try and make sure that everybody was going to be safe. I would tell you that as I look back on that incident or on that day, I now understand that we did a poor job of informing all other staff on a timely basis and asking for their help. In retrospect, I don't think we did a good enough job of communicating to our students during that final exam day. I think we felt a little paralyzed to do that because we were focused on academics and it was final exam day. But what we believe is that following that Facebook posting, the kids, had seen all of that. And so they were walking out of the school building kind of looking for, anticipating something to be happening. And we should have communicated better. We should have told them that, we've taken these preemptive steps. We should have told them that our liaison officer has communicated with the liaison officer in Detroit Public Schools, at that school in the East Side, which absolutely had occurred. We should have taken more steps to reduce their interest in this potential sensationalism. And I look back at that now, and I have to tell you that I do. I see some missed opportunities that I have to be responsible for, and that other members of the administrative staff have to be responsible for as well. But I think it's also important here that we just simply remind ourselves that we're working with and we're trying to help kids. And while this was highly concerning to a certain extent, these types of things have occurred in many communities in many instances before. Maybe not quite to the same number, but my gosh, you roll back the clock 20 or 30 years ago, and at that point in time, particularly in smaller communities like Harper Woods, a kid kind of stepped out of line, and the local constable, I think was the term that was often used, would have a conversation with he or she and or their parents and say, you're kind of having a hard time making good decisions here. Military might just be a circumstance that might help you to kind of sort of understand how to conduct yourself. And I think there was a lot of history of that occurring. My point is simply that young people still need our help, even in 2014, maybe more so in 2014, to make good decisions. And I think we need to remember that. Concerning, absolutely. Unacceptable, no question. Additional steps needed to try and preclude it from occurring again, like learning from that, to never miss an opportunity to communicate better with kids. Yep, I think we missed it. Some other basic things that we could have done, like dismissal on a somewhat staggered schedule, no question, some of those things could have been done better. And so, I'm not trying to minimize this. I will tell you it's the second most concerning event that I've ever seen in my career, and I've been working in Michigan's public schools for 27 years, and I've seen a lot. So I'm not trying to minimize it. I got it on number 2 on my top 10 list of most concerning events that I've seen in my career. But I still, in my heart, look at young kids, and I look at this and I say, it calls us again to be responsible for kids. It calls us again to make a commitment to do better. It calls us again to work in partnership with our community. And it causes us again to recommit to having safe and secure schools and a safe and secure community. And so I know that there are several community members here who are going to address the Board of Education and myself on this issue. And I would tell you that while I'm not happy about the reason that you're here, I am happy that you're here. because a good school district has got to have a good, strong, and supportive community, and a good community has got to have a good school district. And so, in that regard, I do believe that we are a team, and we have to remain committed to these kids, and we have to remain committed to this community. Thank you.
Mr. Beadle, if I got one question for you.
Yes, sir.
It's been reported in some of the media that 9 students were arrested. Do you have any information if that's accurate?
My understanding, Mr. Selburn, is that it has been 7. That is my understanding. Maybe I've been remiss. I believe I got that number directly from Liaison Officer Hill. I would be hesitant to say factually. I will say my understanding was 7.
Mr. B, 7 of our students.
All 7 individuals that we know. I believe one of those individuals was a graduating member of the class of 2014. And I believe that one of those individuals was a student who had been a student here, but was no longer a student here. And I would also tell you, Ms. Quaker, that we know that we are providing opportunities for some students who don't live here within Harper Woods and within the district footprint, to have the opportunity to enroll in our schools and to take advantage of our programs, and that as well has contributed to the financial stability that we've in part celebrated this evening. My understanding is that all of those students who were arrested and all of those students, without exception, who we have been able to identify via some of the video footage and different things that are out there again in social media circles and so forth, are in fact residents of the district. My understanding is not one of the students that we know to have been directly involved was a school of choice student.
Anyone else? I have one more question. I also have seen it reported in the media that the police requested a staggered dismissal.
So,
is that in fact true?
I know that that request was not made of me. I don't believe it was made of Principal Norwood. I would tell you, Mr. Selburn, that when I looked back on it, I do believe we had a staggered dismissal the last day of school last year. Now, by a staggered dismissal, we don't mean that, for example, the middle school was dismissed a half hour early, and then maybe the first floor and then the second floor, but maybe just 5-minute intervals. I do believe that we did that last year, and in retrospect, I think it is a good practice, and sometimes you just got to own it, one that we missed.
But the media made a big deal. Fox TV 2 News made a big deal and said that the police requested that we stagger the dismissal.
No one made that.
That came as a surprise to me.
No one made that request of me, and to my knowledge, it was not made of any staff member in the district.
Okay, and we do stagger as to between Beacon, Tyrone, and the secondary school.
There is some staggering. I know that, in speaking with Principal P at Tyrone, Principal Puzdrachevitz, that she had indicated that, some students were picked up later than usual at Tyrone because parents were having difficulty, picking up older children here and some of those kinds of things. I don't, because I did speak with some Beacon staff that day, as I, like many other staff, were traveling along Beacon's field and trying to offer support and bring this to a close. Several Beacon staff indicated that, they felt as though their kids had been released well in advance and, were not impacted or observing those behaviors directly unless their homes happened to be in that general area. But I do know, or I do believe, that some students from Tyrone were both detained, and for those who were walking along, detained in terms of their parents were not able to pick them up at the normal time. So I don't mean delayed would perhaps be a better term, but I would suggest
that some students perhaps walking from Tyrone who walk a long distance toward the other end of the district may well have seen or encountered some of these concerning activities.
And Beacon kids had been released and were well on their way and were not in a situation of danger?
In speaking with 3 Beacon staff members, not Principal Gottlieben, but in speaking with 3 teachers in the parking lot at Beacon, you know, as that circumstance was beginning to quieten down, that was their perception that they conveyed to me.
Mr. Biederhoff, I'm just curious that if, I'm just wondering that if last year a staggered dismissal was used successfully, why wasn't it implemented this year?
Ms. Williams, it was, so for myself, it just was not something that I recalled. It was just not something that I had in my notes, so I have to own that. As would Mr. Rosser, who, by the way, is just not here because he's had a family emergency. You know, for Principal Norwood, having not been here at that point in time, frankly, you know, when best practices are in place, she's, you know, in part relying upon the experiences of her other teammates, like Mr. Rosser and like myself.
So going forward, this will be something that we do.
It's in our notes now. It's something that just simply makes sense, Mrs. Menino, yes. And it should have been done this year as well.
All right. That brings us to 12.0, which is public participation. Any members of the community, of the audience wish to address the board, please step up to the podium and identify yourselves and say what's on your mind.
My name is Michael Tipp, 18575 Eastwood Drive. I've been a Harper Woods resident for about 20 years.
Okay. I didn't catch your name,
My name
sir.
is Michael Tipp. I've been 18575 Eastwood Drive. I've been a Harper Woods resident for about 20 years. Do we have any money in the food budget for a cake and ice cream right now? Do we have enough money in the food? That was supposed to be funny. I wanted some cake and ice cream right now. Anyway, I've been here for 20 years. I grew up in Detroit. I lived through the 67 riots and the 68 Tiger winning the World Series. I went to a school that I thought was a military school, Stellwagen. Everybody loved each other. All the teachers were truly lovely disciplinarians and what have you.
Over on Chandler Park, I want to say?
Yes,
Yes,
Outer
sir.
Drive, Jennifer.
Outer Drive, yes.
And it was pretty cool, even though we couldn't get away with much. If there was ever a lunchbox missing or any pushing and shoving, the school went on lockdown. Nothing got away with anybody at any given time, and it was a beautiful place to go to school. Those are the things that I remember. Even the teachers carried around wooden rulers. So if you went home with the numbers 10, 11, and 12 on your backside, you knew you had a problem that day.
Was this a Catholic school?
No, it's a public school. As a matter of fact, I failed to mention that. It was a public school, without a doubt. The nuns, yes, they carried more than rulers. But anyway, you know, basically you have your solid families with mothers and fathers and whatever, and teachers, of course, trying to be involved with the schools and maintaining, striving for good grades and promoting good character. This is what Harper Woods has always been to me. This is exactly what it has always been to me. I look forward now, and what I see is a reprehensible, negative scenario at a once prominent and positive setting. And it really, really hurts. It hurts me terribly. Now I see teachers that are biding their time. They're biding their time towards their retirement, actually in fear. I'm not a doomsayer, because I do believe in our teachers and our community. On Thursday, June 12th, when I was riding down Beaconsfield, I was stunned. I was actually floored by the riotous, blatant disregard and the lack of respect that was shown towards our city, the police, and ultimately our teachers too. I am sickened by this behavior. We have to do something. How is this going to be addressed? Is this a cultural issue, which I actually believe is a cop-out, because I think this can be resolved? I don't care if it's policemen, and I want to have nothing to do with this, but what do we do? Is it a police martial law type issue? Do we strictly enforce ordinance violations? Do we start expelling students for life? It goes from, in my opinion, living here for 20 years and living right next to Kelly, it goes from boomboxes to vulgar dialogue between little children. That absolutely blows my mind. So something, once again, has to be done from start to finish. I think the floodgates have been opened. A message was just sent that it's okay to punk out your local police and to do whatever you want, mob rules, and what have you. Once again, something has to be done. What do? This is unacceptable. Staggering the dismissal times, I believe, is a good idea. I do believe that the city did in fact instruct or request that the times be staggered, because I was at the council meeting yesterday and they told me to get my buns over here just to voice my opinion. We do need to nip a few things in the bud, without a doubt. Kids are kids, but mob mentality cannot be tolerated. Thank you very much, and I hope we can get to the bottom of this.
Thanks for being here, sir.
Good evening, Dan Lush, 19555 Woodmont, we're right on the corner over here in Woodmont and Beaconsfield. And just to echo, it was very disheartening. I wasn't here, I was at work, but my wife called me and I could hear the commotion and the police sirens in the background for about 5 minutes while I talked to her. So it is very disheartening, and earlier this evening, there was talk about, peer intervention programs and peer support programs that the district has in place, and I realized that there was only a very few students involved, maybe it's 1% or less of the population, but maybe there's a bit of a disconnect between what goes on in some of those peer programs and intervention programs and what was evidenced out here last Thursday. So I hope maybe that could be a focus of it. All students who were detained or arrested, I know that they all have, rightly so, their day in court, and, they should have the right to have a hearing on what happens. But I would hope that once it gets past that stage, that the district would look at those particular students under the terms of your board policies that talk about, fighting and punching and hurting somebody. I don't believe anybody got hurt seriously, but unfortunately, rather. It could have been worse had somebody punched harder or took it to another level. So I would hope that the district would, once they get past that status of whatever criminal hearings are going to be in place, that the district look at actions in light of your policies that talk about that kind of behavior. But I think, you have signs on all the fences of all the buildings touting all the good things that go on here, and that's great. But last Thursday, a few students bought a ton of negative publicity that probably in the short term can't be recouped or gotten away from. So I think, Mr. Biederhoff, I appreciate your comments that you said tonight, and I would suggest that something like that go out in a letter to every resident of the community of Harper Woods, even not just the district of Harper Woods, but the whole city. Because I think there's a lot of people that are looking for information. There's a lot of rumors as to what happened and how pervasive it was and how extensive it was. If that could get out to everybody. I was at the tail end of the city council meeting last night, and I know that there was a suggestion brought up that the city formally pursue the school district for a recoupment of the costs associated with that, how they would calculate that in terms of, we sent 20 police officers or whatever the case may be. But there is, I want you to be aware that there is a ground current of anti-school right now that I sense in the community. Sure. You got to nip this in the bud in the short term. And then two, as was already said, going forward, what do? So we have a community relations committee, and it seems like that needs to get in place, and we should have some activity going on as to community forums to see what we can do to move in a different direction. It is unacceptable. Let's put the blame where it belongs on the kids, and I would hope at some point in time, if there are kids who are held responsible, that they and their parents come forward and apologize for that atrocious behavior. I don't know that that'll ever happen, but you know, there's 99% of the kids who go here who mind their own business, who are good students and don't cause trouble. It's that 1%, I suppose it's in every community, that's going to have some negative effect. But I'd be willing to sit down and talk to anybody in terms of a committee or anything like that to brainstorm ideas about what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, sir.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Willie Smith. I live on Frankfurt. I have a daughter that goes to this school. And first I want to say, before we go any further, Ms. Norbert, I wanted to really come in the graduation, because I really liked the graduation. I thought the graduation outside was wonderful. I thought that was going to be the upbeat of this meeting. But I'm here, just like a couple of speakers before me. My daughter had told me the night before, the last day of school, she said, "Dad, can you come pick me up from school? Because it's going to be a lot of fights." It's always little fights last day of school. But I had just taken a day off the day before to go over to Tyrone for my son's award ceremony. So I said, "Well, honey, just make sure after you get out of school, you just get ahead of the fights. And if they're fighting, you go across the street and you go straight home, call me once you get home." She says, "Dad, on Instagram, they're talking about the fights." Now, she didn't say about Chandler Park and Detroit schools. She was talking about the Harper Woods students who were going to fight. I really I didn't pay much attention to her. I was preoccupied when she said it. And she said, well, one of the other students' parents was going to bring her home after school. I'm at work, she calls me. That school is dismissed. She says, "Dad, can you come pick me up?" And I said, "No, I told you I have to work, I can't pick you up." I said, "Well, just go straight home, go home ahead of the fights. Call me once you get home." She called me, she said, "Dad, this was scary. I was scared." She said, "It was dangerous." She said, "People got maced, pepper sprayed." Mr. Beaterworth, if we're going to talk frankly, we have to be completely honest. It was more than maybe 10 kids. It was more than maybe 10 fights. I've spoken to my neighbors, I've spoken to other kids, and it was at least 15, 20, maybe even more. I've heard from my neighbors who said it was like a riot. It was like a war zone. To have more than 3 different police agencies come to our city, for an after-school fight involving this school. Now, this city also, we house Harper Woods, Chandler Park. The majority of those students are Detroit students. And they don't have the same problems that we have when we dismiss. We have to be frank that there's a problem that needs to be addressed. When I watched a Fox 2 News video, and I volunteer and I help out at the school, I seen at least 7 or 8 faces that I knew that were fighting. Our students. I've heard about the ones that wasn't on video. These are the ones that was captured on video. All I can do is ask the other students in my neighborhood, my daughter's friends, and they said these are the same students who get in trouble over and over again. We continue to allow them to come back to our school. I understand the kids are going to be kids, but when kids commit crimes, they become kids who are committing crimes that are now criminals. Sometimes we have to be strong with our discipline, and they should not be welcome at the school when we have students here that are here to learn. My daughter is here to learn. My son will be coming from Tyrone to the middle school this year. And he's already said, "Dad, I don't want to go to the school," because he witnessed what happened. Tyrone did dismiss around the same time that this was going on. My neighbor stopped some children from Tyrone. He would let them go on to Beaconsfield. They were walking in that direction. But because of all the chaos that was going on, we have to do a better job. I have witnessed students threaten at least 3 employees of the school. And those students were allowed to continue to come to this school. That's not fair to the employees. I can understand if a teacher does not want to get involved when things go on at our school. It becomes only a job. Let me come here, get my paycheck, and go home. Because we don't have any support. We need to do a better job. We need to address it. Those kids, those who were arrested, those who were captured on the video fighting, we need to send out a strong message. I just wanted to share my opinion. I was very upset. I did not witness it, I was at work, but I witnessed the aftermath. And even on Father's Day, I was at a cookout. They talked about Harper Woods. I went to work on Monday morning. They talked about Harper Woods. It's not a good look for our city.
I hear you. Thank you for being here, Will.
Phyllis Green, parent, employee. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us not to overlook the fact that we need more parent participation. That is a very it's an issue that we cannot seem to get a hold on. And we need more parents involved. We need more community members involved. And I've been fortunate enough to be on both sides of this fence. I have 3 kids here, one that graduated a couple of years ago. When we put on Parents on Patrol to get parents involved, we had a number that dwindled down to maybe 10 faithful people. Then we go and we have community meetings asking parents to come. You have the same faithful 10 or 15 people. This is no way undermining what is going on here, and not saying that we don't need to do more protocols or more things, but we have got to have more parent participation and more parents involved in their kids' lives. I understand they're working, they're doing things, I don't care. We need more parents involved, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Anyone else? Okay. That brings us to matters of interest to board members.
Got a couple things. First, I disagree with a lot of things that were said tonight. Start with Mr. Vederol. This wasn't an issue with 10 or 12 kids, and it wasn't an issue with the 15 kids you mentioned fighting, because I've seen these videos, I've talked to people that had front row seats. These fights pale in comparison to a number of fights that have happened on this campus this year that were violent fights. These were probably more skirmishes. The real problem here is all the other students' reactions to these. Running up and down the street, cheering, videotaping, parents videotaping. It was absolutely absurd. It's not 15 kids. We're talking hundreds of kids that contributed to this chaotic riot environment. The kids that were the centerpieces of it may have started it, but if not for all these kids' reactions around there, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I hear all the anti-school sentiment. I hear, school should have done this, school should have done that. We start off the school year, show them a school handbook. Make sure they get the rules. Tell them the expectations. Character programs. We do all kinds of character programs. We teach kids how to, say please and thank you and how they're supposed to act in society. We teach them health. We teach them sex education. We feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We monitor Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the other names that I don't know. What are we supposed to be doing here? We're school, right? Because I haven't got to math and English and everything else. These are all things that are now responsibilities of schools. Out of everything that was said tonight, nobody's saying, where are the parents? You know, where are the parents? Well, yeah, they're saying, where are parents in general? I'm saying, where are the parents of these kids? All of these kids. You know, it just, I have a different take of it. I'm no less disappointed, disgusted, any other word you want to use to describe it. I'm with you, but I'm looking at it a little differently. And, you know, it's everything's the school's responsibility now. You know, we're going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to feed them. We're going to continue to try to tell them that this isn't the way to behave. I'm pretty sure that all of our administrators understand that. I'm sure all of our administrators wouldn't have their own children or families acting like this. Or if they were, they would be on it like you wouldn't believe. So it's not that we don't get it, but add one more thing to the requirements of public schools. And I don't know. It's concerning. Now, I did not witness it in its infancy, but I saw it before it was broken up, and it was bad. It was really bad. Hundreds, and this is not an over-exaggeration, we're talking hundreds of kids running in herds up and down Beaconsfield to get to the next thing, cheering and yelling, and this is the best thing they've done. We got a problem bigger than 10 or 15 kids fighting. So, that's all I have to say.
It's this bad. Because even when I got the call, and I was at home, when I walked out my door, all I did was just stood there and just look. I didn't even make it to the corner, and it was horrible. Then when I did get to the corner, by the time you got, Beacon was blocked off this way, down there by Kenosha, it was even worse. I'm looking at kids like they just run across. Like, what the heck is this? What are we, I mean, seriously. And I'm like, which was, I mean, I'm not gonna say which was, but someone could have gotten hurt. Because I did inform a couple of people about this was gonna happen a couple of weeks ago, because I got the same information that this what the kids was plotting. And I informed a couple of people and told them this. But the thing is that if we don't nip this in the butt before school starts back, this is what we're gonna see here. We're gonna have, something needs to be done. I don't know what, I'm like you, the more that we work with these children, we don't get no parents' participation. I'm just as puzzled as you and everybody else might be, but it's to the point where it comes to when it's safety. Safety is the big factor here. If we don't stop it now, something is going to seriously happen, and the school is going to be held accountable. We're gonna have to do something.
Anyone else? I wasn't at home. I wasn't in the city when this happened. I was downtown. So I can't really speak to how many kids or what happened. I just have a couple of comments. I'm disappointed that our administrators did not anticipate even the potential for something like this, especially if last year we staggered the dismissals and this year we don't. It's just, that's really disappointing, especially with getting some warnings the night before, even if it involved another school, not being able to anticipate that there could be a real issue come dismissal, and we need to take special action at dismissal, which it doesn't appear, I haven't heard of any special action that was taken. It's real disappointing. We've heard some comments here about comments at a city council meeting. I don't know if those are comments from the public or comments from the council, but I just want to point out one thing first in particular. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago, the council had a committee meeting. They had their ordinance committee had a meeting. And it was the first time that that committee had met in years. And I attended that meeting, and believe it or not, Mr. Biederwolf attended that meeting as well. was very surprised. He didn't tell me he was coming. He walked in the door and there he was. I was real surprised. And Mr. Biederwolf asked the City Council Ordinance Committee to please consider a specific ordinance. And it was something that they had in effect in Warren, where he had come from as an administrator. And that was to make fighting a civil infraction. Because what he found and what Warren found was, yes, fighting, assault and battery, that's a misdemeanor. But there's a reluctance on the part of the police and the schools to pursue a misdemeanor against a school-age child for fighting. Many of us, when we were kids, either were in fights or our friends were involved in fights. It's just something that kids do. You don't really want to tag a kid with a criminal record over something like that. But what Mr. Biederwolf said was that in Warren, they found that making it a civil infraction, in other words, a ticket. You fight, the police come, and they issue you a ticket, and you got to come to court. Not only do you have to come to court, but your parents have to come to court. And you got to answer to somebody, or you got to pay a fine. First fine, I think, was $50.
My recollection was 65, Mr. Selber,
Okay.
but it's been a while.
And then it escalated. You do it again, it doubles. You do it again, now you're getting serious. And the parent, either the kid or the parents are going to have to pay that ticket. And that's a wake-up call for the parents, because they don't like to spend money. Well, he put that to the ordinance committee. They said, thank you very much, Mr. Biederwolf. Nothing was ever heard again. Nothing. They didn't take it up with the council. They didn't make any to my knowledge, there were no recommendations made. There was no consideration of that. So that was a disappointment. If any of you are in communication with the council, you can point that out to them, that Mr. Biederwolf came to their committee. I was there. I can attest to that, and said, this is what we would like to see happen. We think it'll be helpful here, just as it was helpful in the city of Warren. So if they want to point fingers, I don't really want to point fingers, but that was a disappointment that they didn't follow up on it. Maybe they could decide we're not going to do it, but I'd like to at least consider it and discuss it. So I wanted to point that out. Maybe we can light a fire on them for that. It might be helpful. Certainly, a number of tickets issued last week might prove helpful in the future to wake up those parents when they have to go and write a check or go down to City Hall and drop off some cash. So I guess that's about it for what I have to say. I can't really address what happened. I didn't see it. I'm horrified by it. I guess I'm hoping going forward something changes. I want to see consequences. I've already had a discussion with Mr. Biederwolf saying we need to have consequences for those that we can identify. I think there's efforts that are being made to identify them, and I'm anticipating that there will be consequences for those that can be identified. Anybody else? Okay, I guess that's it. We're adjourned. Thank you.